Welcome to Co-Opinions. My name is Josh, and today I have Nick with me.
Hello, Joshua.
So this week we're going to have a love fest for Super Mario RPG, a RPG from the Super Nintendo that both of us felt tremendously about. However, first let's talk about some of the small news and things we played this last few weeks. Nick?
Josh, I have been playing River City Tokyo Rumble. That's delightful. So it's the 30th anniversary of the River City Ransom series. This was a game that came out in September for the Nintendo 3DS, which is essentially yet another remake of the very first game, River City Ransom, which does kind of speak to the overall straits of this series in the West. There have been a lot of these games released in Japan with a lot of variety to them, both sports games as well as some other wacky stuff, including some period pieces. But at this point for the West, it's essentially, we got River City Random EXE on the Game Boy Advance back in 2004, and we are now getting River City Tokyo Rumble in 2016. It's a lot of fun. They added in some more RPG elements, including like just different random side quest things, like hey, go bash these guys in the head. It's a fun little brawler. It's great having those Nintendo style graphics with some of the flair of graphical techniques that the 3DS can do as far as that 3D. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I think anyone who's looking for a good brawler should pick it up.
Now, one of the only drawbacks I heard about this, because when you told me it came out, there's no multiplayer. Is that correct?
I honestly don't know.
Okay. I thought I looked it up because when you'd mentioned it, I went, hey, we might have a new thing to play. And I looked it up and they go, one of the biggest drawbacks is no multiplayer. Well, dang it. So, but it sounds like you're having a great time with it. I believe there was some other things though, wasn't there?
Well, I've also been doing a little bit of Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE. So that's the RPG by the Fire Emblem and Shin Megami Tensei development teams on the Wii U. That's a lot of fun. Still a little bit of over-the-top idle stuff to kind of give you an idea about how over-the-top it is. The second dungeon was themed around this photographer who photographs these models, which ends up kidnapping them. And they've kidnapped the head of your talent agency that you're a part of. You're already seeing how many levels of idle stuff were involved in here.
It's like an onion. An onion of idols.
Well, you get to the end of this dungeon and you get kicked out originally because this photographer thing seals away your powers, and you have to go ahead and find this model book that your mentor, the head of this record label, was a part of. So you find this old fashion magazine that she modeled for, and that empowers your characters to go ahead and be able to put their best into their modeling, and you are then able to fight this boss.
Does it show what kind of modeling she did?
It shows their jaws dropping as they're looking at it, and it was called My Complex, so I'm taking it in the best directions.
All right, acceptable. Well, as long as you're enjoying it, right?
It's great JRPG combat, so it's got the elemental weakness system of the other Persona games and Shin Megami Tensei games. And as far as your skills and how you get those, it kind of harkens back to Final Fantasy IX, where you have your weapons, you equip those weapons, and then you gain skills by powering up those weapons. So I'm enjoying that little fusion.
All right, sounds good. Did you want to go ahead and hit the small news stories you had? I know you had a few.
Sure, we can go ahead and talk about Kingdom Hearts. We had Kingdom Hearts 2. You'll have to correct me with the names here because I've honestly gotten lost in the sea of numerals they keep throwing at us. It's 1.5 and 2.5 for the PS4 coming out in March, and then there's also 2.8, which comes out on the PS4 in January.
The 2.8 has some final mix prologue or something. It's some... So we try not to be overwhelmingly negative on this show because there's so much but it's so hard on this one.
Go listen to that Xenoblade Mighty No. 9 episode again, folks.
Hey man, those were valid criticisms. That wasn't just pure salt. Anyways, the thing about that was, so they're releasing 6 games in a compilation in March, and they're releasing 3 games in a compilation in January. You know, the fact that they called the compilation in January 2.8, there's going to be a 2.9 before 3 comes out, which is all 9 games. We still don't know when 3 is coming out. All we know is we're getting 2 compilations in 2017. For all we know, we're getting 2.9 in the holiday season. Then March 2018, we're getting Kingdom Hearts 3.
And it wouldn't surprise me if you did possibly see. I mean, Square's really been going more into this Ultimate Edition space. We saw that with Final Fantasy 15 with the different versions. You have your Day 1 edition, you have your Collector's Edition, and your Ultimate Edition. I'm very curious if we'll see kind of a Kingdom Hearts Ultimate Collection that comes out at the launch of Kingdom Hearts 3. That seems like something that would move gangbusters for them because of how much people love a good collection to just say, pay us $300 and you get the Kingdom Hearts saga.
Yeah, and... again, trying not to be too salty, but at that point, how many times could you have owned these games? 4 times? Own it on the original, own it on the re-release, own it on the re-re-release, potentially own it on the re-re-re-release, and then, 4 times.
Here's to the super fans.
Man, they're the ones who really keep it going, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
But anyways, there was something involving Sonic, I believe, as well.
That's correct. So Sonic Mania had some new footage shown off that's showing this new stage. I think one of the more interesting things about that was not so much the gameplay aspect, although that continues to look delightful, but in the background of this footage, then you have these wanted posters showcasing some characters from the Sonic comics.
Really?
That's correct.
Archie comics?
That's correct.
Wow.
Knack the Weasel, Bark the Bear, I think, and then Bean the Duck.
Now, Knack the Weasel was actually in Triple Trouble, though.
He was.
Okay.
These other two, however, I believe are exclusive to the comic books. Bean comes from the Bird Clan, I think the Cuckoo Clan, who I believe were introduced in Tails Sky Patrol on the Game Gear, although that's kind of a tentative link. That's really more comic focused. But this is a case where this is a trio that has teamed up and has been an oppositional force to Sonic in the comic series. So to have this little element popping up in there was really kind of exciting. I love that idea of having these mediums kind of converge together and kind of play off of each other. The Sonic comics have just wrapped up their take on the Sonic Unleashed arc, which has been going on in the comics for a few years now, and I'd really like that to see a greater interplay between those. Bunny Rabbit in a Sonic game, Princess Sally in a Sonic game. I think there's a lot of Sonic comic readers that have been wanting to see something like that since they were little, and I'm definitely one of them.
I mean, it would be super impressive because, as the listeners might not be aware, I gave you a sizable chunk of my Sonic comics that I personally own. They went from issue approximately 25 to mid-70s, I think. Somewhere in there. I was all in for a while, and then I couldn't keep doing it, but that was me.
Well, that's the Sonic comic series. You have issues 0 to 25 where it's good pun-based humor, 25 to 50 where it's kind of a little bit of cheesy drama, and then 50 to about 150 where we just take some weird turns. A lot of writers come in and out. Ian Flynn comes on around there, spends 2 years cleaning up all of that crap, and then starts doing his own thing before Ken Penders ruins things for the second time and causes a lawsuit issue. And that's Sonic the Comics. 25 years, all summed up for everyone.
Oh, buddy.
How about you, Josh? What sort of news items do you want to touch on? What have you been playing lately?
So, the things that I've been playing, the big one I focused on was I actually wrapped up Twilight Princess HD. And when I played this back in 2006, I would say I didn't have the best opinion of it. And this is something at some point we'll talk about 3D Zelda games and I'll get into it more. But this playthrough really increased my respect for it because it's in this playthrough I realized all the stuff that they were kind of trying to do as opposed to what I thought they should be doing. So I'll go into that in much greater detail, but a lot of the complaints I'd had about it were rectified. It's still the worst Ganon, I think, in the entire series, personally. He doesn't say anything until the final fight. Oh yeah, spoiler, Ganon's the final boss. I'll get into this when we talk about 3D Zeldas at some point.
Nothing but positivity and co-opinions, folks.
Listen, man, I try so hard. There are so many good Ganon. Now is not the time.
No.
Now is not the time. But another small detail, I mentioned on the last episode that I'd beaten Ace Attorney 6, and I was happy with how that turned out. I don't think I included this anecdote about the phone ringing. Do you remember that? Okay, cool. Didn't want to repeat material. So as you might know, my current ringtone is the one from Phoenix Wright, which in the game, when his phone rings, it's that ringtone. So I found the MP3 online and I put it on my phone. And when I was beating Ace Attorney 6, near the end of the game, somebody calls Phoenix Wright in the game. And for a brief moment, I was so confused because my phone was on my lap and I'm going, but nobody's calling me. Why is my phone ringing through the 3D? Oh, right. It's been that way for like 5 years at this point. It didn't even cross my mind that that's where I got it from because I've just had it that long. So I thought that was pretty entertaining.
Nice.
I am planning to start up Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, in pretty short order. Brent will be stoked about that. And I also purchased the game Oxenfree on PS4. I'm planning on trying to play through that in pretty short order. It's supposed to be a really well-reviewed kind of walking simulator, like coming-of-age teen thing mixed with Poltergeist.
I thought it was an adventure game. Are there actual puzzles to it, or is it more of just explore around and enjoy the ambiance?
Well, What was that game you played that ended with Zero Time Dilemma? It started with...
Oh, 9 hours, 9 doors, 9 destinies, I think.
There was... This is a legit spoiler, by the way, so jump ahead like a minute. I know there was something about branching timelines in that game, and that was actually crucial to the true ending. In this game, the branching timelines, the decisions you make, are represented as branching timelines where you actually talk in between the dimensions where you made different decisions, I think. I'll give you more insight once I beat it. Anyways, let's move on to my little small news. The first thing is that supposedly the lead developer on No Man's Sky tweeted out No Man's Sky was a mistake. So this is a shout out specifically to Mike Wheeler, who is so pumped about this game. The hype train is real and it kills. So don't get on it. That's all I gotta say about that one. It's a huge bummer. I feel worse for the developers than I do the people who bought the game, because Sony even admitted it had a bad PR strategy. They overhyped it.
What I'm curious about with that and the whole structure of that tweet is it's kind of playing off of it. It's almost sardonic. It's kind of making fun of itself there. So I'm kind of curious whether that's actually kind of a little bit of self-loathing, or if that's more meant to just be kind of a little bit of a bitchy slap at the people who are to talk about how terrible it is, or maybe a little bit of both.
I am curious as well. The last bit of little news I wanted to bring up was the fact that Bethesda is no longer sending out review copies of their games. This is a very underhanded move to me.
Co-Opinions is now boycotting all Bethesda games.
Absolutely not. I'm immediately recanting that because I loved Doom. I loved Wolfenstein. And in fact, Doom was what they kind of hitched their wagon to on this one. They wanted to see if they could get away with not sending out review copies, and it hurt their sales. It didn't. So they didn't send out review copies for Skyrim Special Edition, Complete Edition, whatever Skyrim just came out that was the PS4 version, PS4, Xbox One, blah, blah, blah. And a bunch of review sites are super upset. I'm hoping that this gets some garbage games into people's hands, and then maybe they'll rethink pre-ordering. Because we had a whole episode dedicated to not doing pre-ordering. And it's not, again, I'm not trying to be negative on this one, but we need to have higher standards for these kind of things. If we want good games that have engaging gameplay, interesting characters, good story, we can't give people money before they even show us what they're going to be. Looking at you, Assassin's Creed Unity.
It's worked pretty well for me for Sega games this year.
I like all the qualifiers you have for Sega games this year. How did it work for Lightning Returns?
That did not work so well. that was a cash money bonfire right there.
Oh, buddy. But one day we will talk about that series in its entirety. Did we already do that?
We did not. That's another X we have to grind for another day.
All right, wonderful. So let's get on to our major topic here that will take up the rest of the episode, and that is the game Super Mario RPG. The reason we wanted to get into this was because Mario has had some interesting RPG spin-offs, and I was talking to Nick and I asked him, what do you think would be a good way to approach Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi and Super Mario RPG? And he goes, we can't hit them all at once. That's too beefy of a topic. And we both love Super Mario RPG. Let's do an episode about that. Fully on board with it. We will be talking about when we got this game, what we thought about it, all the positive things, and surely some negative things, because nothing's perfect. So to start it out, this game came out in 1996 when both of us were approximately 9-10 years old. Thereabouts. So, Nick, why don't you tell me when you got this game?
I remember getting the game. It was something where my brother had gone off to some sort of party with a friend, and I didn't really have a lot of friends growing up. And it was something where my dad wound up having us go to the store, and I was allowed to pick out a video game to go ahead and get. And I didn't think I'd be able to go ahead and get that one. I knew the game had come out. I knew it was this Mario RPG, but it was also $70 because cartridge video games, especially in the late 90s, were much more expensive than a lot of us remember. A lot of us who were young back then remember. So I kind of asked about that one, expecting I'd probably get told no, but I think my dad kind of felt a little bit bad for me that he'd just given my brother some money to go off and do this party and stuff with his friends, and he knew that I didn't really have friends, I just had video games, and he let me go ahead and get it. And it was one of those just really happy memories I had where I just sunk myself very deep into that game. I don't remember any of the ads about it. I don't remember my awareness about the game. I just remember seeing that cover where you have the three characters on the front and wanting to play it. What's a Mario RPG? I have no idea, but I like Final Fantasy, and Final Fantasy is an RPG. I bet a Mario RPG is just as good, and it was.
It was fantastic. Loved it to death. And I thought it was interesting that the cover, they used the recognizable Mario characters on that. And we'll get into this a little more later, but you had Mario, Peach, Bowser in your party eventually, but you also, the two first characters you got were characters we've never seen again. Rip in peace, Gino. Yeah, I know, right?
And I noticed you didn't say that about Mallow. You said rest in peace to Gino, not to Mallow.
Because Gino was so incredibly unique. Like, Mallow you felt you had closure with at the end of that game.
Yep.
Gino felt like he actually could come back and do stuff. Mallow, you thought he was going to grow up in Nimbus Kingdom and do his thing. Like, his story was done.
Yes.
Anyways, because you had mentioned the press involved with it, I remember seeing the commercial where the old man was telling some kids about, well, back in our days, we had giant snowmen and thunderbolts. And I saw it was Mario and there were flashing lights and I was 9, so this is amazing. I want to buy this. What do you mean it's $60? Oh my word. Yeah, you are spot on the money about that. These games were just as expensive back then. And now they're 3 to 8 hours long, assuming they didn't fill them with mindless grinding. Looking at you, Donkey Kong Country, and again, Super Mario RPG. But I remember that I got the game, and I don't think I'd played an RPG before this, which is one of the questions I wanted to ask you. You said you liked Final Fantasy. I did not play Final Fantasy 1, and I'm gonna do a thing that Japanese game players hate to death. I didn't play 1, 2, or 3, where 2 and 3 were the Super Nintendo 2 or 3. I had played Secret of Evermore, but I'm not 100% sure that a lot of people would count that, even though it straight up is an RPG. It's not Secret of Mana.
I think so with that stat system that you had for Secret of Evermore that I would count that. As far as my background, I had done Final Fantasy Mystic Quest and Final Fantasy II on the Super Nintendo. So at that point, I was pretty well associated with a lot of the tropes and elements of it. But I hadn't done Secret of Evermore or Secret of Mana. So having the timed battle system where you have that turn-based with that element of real time for the Mario games, that was something that was new to me that I enjoyed a lot.
That turn-based system was that turn-based action context. What did they call it? Timed hits. They know about timed hits.
Yes.
That's a trope now, which I just think's delightful. And that was something that I always thought, even to this day, is a fantastic game design, because even if you're a fan of RPGs, turn-based, etc., it just kind of feels like you're putting buttons into a machine if it's turn-based. With the timed hits, it forces you to actually be engaged not only after you attack, but when you're being attacked. So I always thought, even at the time, that was good, which I don't know if a game did it before that, and I'm sure positive games have done it since. Do you know if any game had done that prior to Super Mario RPG?
I can't name one off the top of my head, but I would disagree with what you said there, just since you had that active time battle system in Final Fantasy IV where you would keep on getting hit if you weren't making your decisions in a timely fashion. So you still had that pressure to go ahead and act there in the moment.
You could change it, though, from active to passive, though, couldn't you?
If you're a casual.
Well, yeah. I mean, look at me. Anyway. So, on your first play of the game, what do you remember of your first playthrough of the game? Because I actually kind of have 2 first playthroughs, but I'll explain that.
What I remember, and especially I guess we'll talk about subsequent playthroughs later, was just how massively long it seemed to me.
Right?
Part of that was I would get stuck at certain areas, so things like the puzzles in Davy Jones's ship, in that sunken ship, those tripped me up for quite a bit as a child. I remember having issues with Krakow as a kid, so one of the things I used to do was I would I died to him once or twice whenever I was younger, so what I did was I grinded to level 6, and then I was able to beat him very easily since you had the flame orb attack then, I wasn't just relying on jump. And at that point, then all the other fights in the game were similarly very doable. I don't remember that with subsequent playthroughs, though, being an issue. Like, each time I get to Krako, I'm able to just roll right through him, and every now and again I still grind to level 6 just for old time's sake. You get used to the way that you've played certain games sometimes.
The big thing about Krako was he was the first enemy, if memory serves. So Krako was the guy who steals your money and Mallow's stuff at the beginning of the game.
He has a bitchin' top hat.
He has a fantastic top hat, and he steals Mallow's frog coin. He's the reason Mallow joins your party. He was the first enemy that could heal, and he was the first enemy to me that had a attack that was really hard to time the block his bombs away, and that would wreck you. That was a one-hit kill.
I didn't realize you could actually block that one. I almost thought it was some sort of a special attack thing that you had to take the full run, so that's good to know.
Yeah, the timing on it is incredibly specific, but you can block, I believe, every attack in that game.
One other thing I want to call out about his design was I really enjoyed just the look on his face. I thought they did a perfect job of capturing a certain amount of malice, a certain amount of playfulness, and also just a certain hint of mockery to it. You get the sense just looking at him that he doesn't like you, he doesn't take you seriously, and that he's enjoying the fact that he's messing with you.
He was that game was full of strong characters that delivered pretty consistently the entire way through. I mean, Krako even showed back up at the end of the game after he robbed you once, then he robbed you again in Moleville, then he showed back up in Bowser's Castle near the end as a shop. I thought that was really interesting.
And he also shows up in the credits where I believe he's pilfering something in the parade float.
He's robbing Bowser's Castle, I believe, and then Bowser comes out on his clown car and chases him.
I think you're right.
What was it? Was there anything else specific that jumped out at you about your first playthrough?
The joy of Booster's Tower and just how wonderful that sound was. That was just such a fun-loving little atmosphere. It's kind of like the game show music in Donkey Kong Country 2, where you have a certain ambiance in some of these older video games that just at a young age, you're just in tune with that playful nature to it and just how fun it is.
Booster's Tower was maybe one of my favorite areas in a Super Nintendo game. Between the music, the puzzles that were not necessary but still did amazing things for you, and the Easter eggs where you could go behind the curtain and become 8-bit Mario, which at the time, we were like, oh man, I can't believe they're having this huge throwback, which, thinking back to it, it was only from 9 years earlier.
Yep.
Oh my word, how time flies.
I also enjoyed shortly after that the entire Mary Moore sequence where
Yes.
that whole drama around who's going to get married, the thing having both Booster and Bowser kiss you on the cheeks.
You know that there's other options there,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Okay.
That's just the one that's one of the funniest ones to me.
I like the one where Booster and Bowser kiss each other.
That's great too. Just in general, I love that about having Bowser as an ally and his overall personality in this game. It was very much the I'm a tough guy, the tough guy with the heart of gold kind of thing. I enjoy that kind of a character trope, and especially when they had Bowser start doing the googly eyes whenever he was just so sad about whatever was happening. He's got his tears streaming down, and he realizes, oh god, people are watching me. I'm just being a badass over here. I'm gonna go retake my tower, guys. See ya. Oh, you want me to join you? Yeah, I guess I could favor you with my presence as Bowser.
I remember one of the earlier times they gave you an indication of that was when Bowser was helping return Princess Peach to the Toadstool Kingdom, and he says, forget you losers, I got bigger fish to fry. What do you mean you have bigger fish to fry? Uh-oh. So that they really did create really good characterization for those characters, which it's a little disappointing that some of it hasn't really carried over, but Square Enix and Nintendo working together on that property, that was just a gold game. But again, we're biased because at the time we were approximately 10, so almost everything was awesome at that age. And was there anything else you had about your first playthrough? All right. Was there any place you had significant problems as a child?
Well, other than some of the puzzles for like the Davy Jones puzzle room, I don't really remember a lot of areas giving a lot of problems. I do think that I had some issues with combat for some of the later stuff, like the Axum Rangers. It's something I enjoy playing through now and enjoying that boss rush where you fight the Flame Dragon, the Zombie Dragon, and then the Axum Rangers in that volcano. But at the time, I remember the Axum Rangers definitely doing a lot of damage.
So, did you know that after you beat the volcano dragon, he had Tsar Dragon, that was his name. The Tsar Dragon, then the zombie dragon. You can actually go back to the save point.
I do that every time now. I didn't realize it as a kid because I just assumed, yep, beat the boss, gonna get my star. What do you mean I have to fight again? Oh God. Oh, this isn't good.
This is not going great. The thing I remember, again, it did seem like it took forever. I remember I had trouble with even the first star boss as a child, Mac. I had difficulty with him. And I remember for some reason I had trouble at the forest maze because it was kind of designed to trip up children. I also remember having an issue. I didn't have trouble with Davy Jones, but I remember I learned two things. One, you can beat him without taking out his lackeys. That helped tremendously. And for some reason, the reason I didn't have trouble with the puzzles was because I figured out there was a finite combination of things it could be. So if you look at 10-year-old me's notebook, I have 6 rows of 6 letters written out, and I go through Rain Man style and what of this makes a word? So I found a way to get through it, but the one thing that really jumped out at me as difficult was, I think it was the Axum Rangers. Yeah, Axum Rangers this is why I have 2 first playthrough stories. Because I sold the Lazy Shell stuff.
Oh, you poor soul.
Right. I couldn't beat Smithy at the end of the game.
The defense that you get there from the Lazy Shell and putting that on someone to act as your dedicated healer is just too great to pass up. You take so much magic damage from his attacks if you don't do that.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I couldn't beat the game, so I had to replay the whole game. And this was after I'd gotten all the way to the end, then I got a guide, and I was so into this game as a child. I remember in 3rd grade, I had 7 pages written out of my own strategy guide of how to play this game. I had my own little illustrations. I'm like, this is Booster. I don't know if he's got a totally black face or that's a beard or what.
I think as a child, I thought it was just kind of hidden, his helmet was too big for him and you can barely see his face peeking out.
I thought he had the fuzzy face. Remember from Super Mario World, the little black fuzzy things?
Oh, yeah.
I thought that's what he was. And when I had the guide, you can make the case for it's cheating, but I was at the, whatever. And no problems from then on. I could tell you almost everything, but I'm still learning stuff that I didn't know about this game. For example, I learned the last time through that the jump attack goes up in power every time you use it. So the jump attack can potentially be one of the strongest attacks in the game. But I never go through and grind it because about once a year I sit down and just burn through the game in a day.
That would be really interesting as a challenge run. You hear about things like the 3-heart run for a Zelda game, but to do Super Mario RPG using only Mario, only using the jump thing as an attack because you power it up that much. I'm sure someone's done that, but I'd have no interest in that level of challenge myself. I think when you talk about your playthroughs and what you've done where you redo it each year, I think my favorite one of that is where you literally did it in one sitting without getting off of the couch. That still is just incredible to me. That clocked in at 10 hours for you, was it?
I could go and check the records, but I believe it was approximately 10 hours.
10 hours with no bathroom breaks, no food, just one man and one game in perfect unison.
Oh, I killed it.
And who says Josh is a casual? Not me.
There we go. Just me. And it's funny. Now, I wish I could find this notebook because I had all the puzzles written out in Super Mario RPG. I had all the booster cousins and booster ancestors in order. I had all the Todovsky.
Oh, yes, the song compositions.
I had all the songs written out in order, even the ones where you had to figure out what song that the star was playing. If there was a puzzle in that game, I wrote it down in my book. That way, when I got back to it, I could just know exactly what the answer to everything was.
This isn't so much a puzzle, but as far as the Yoshi's Island racing that you had go on, did you have any trouble with the timing for that as a child?
As a child, I had tremendous difficulty with it because, personally, I believe that they explained it very, very poorly. They said that you need to stay on the beat for it, And at the time, that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me because the way they described the beat wasn't how it went with the song. In the way they described it, it said keep beat. Bump, 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 bump. And I could do that, but then the song started up. It's like, do-loo-loo, do-loo-loo, do-loo-loo-loo, do-do. I'm like, what do you mean keep the beat? It's doing do-do-do-do. What do you mean 1, 2? It didn't make sense to young me because I was trying to, go with the song. I was 9.
It's kind of like someone at the piano doing do, re, mi, and then okay, now just sing along to these notes. And then after that, they start doing some sort of Leonard Skinner style piano solo. And they're like, come on, you're not matching my music here, buddy.
Well, I'm still just using the do, re, mi notes. I'm just putting other words to it. You taught me do, re, mi. You didn't teach me a song. But ever since then, I've been able to take out Boshi like that. And
what do you get for that, by the way?
Have you not done that?
I've done it, I just don't remember. Is it you like cookies or something? Okay.
So you get cookies that allow you to summon Yoshi, and when you summon Yoshi, if he can eat enemies, he turns them into other items.
Oh.
And it also allows you to do more racing, which can get you more cookies. And I'm not going to say it breaks the game because I didn't use Yoshi cookies that much, but I remember as a child, it was an accomplishment when I beat Boshi. Because that was not easy for young me. And now, I just go there and I crush him in one time. Okay.
It felt like an accomplishment for me, and the reason I forgot is because I never really used the cookies either. Mm-hmm. And I found myself feeling kind of disappointed. Like I was expecting to get a rad essence or some sort of super rare equipment. So to just get a battle item, I was like, well, I spent a lot more time on this than just a battle item, don't you think, Square Enix?
And I would agree with that, but not ever since I played personally. It's just gotten easier, but that happens as you get older and play. You hold this up against Bloodborne. What are you going to do there?
Or why would you do that compare a Mario RPG to a game like that in the first place, right?
Pretty much. Because I platinumed one of them and the other one I played almost 2.5 decades ago.
Wow, Shin Megami Tensei 4 sure is hard compared to Paper Mario Color Splash. Well, I don't think these are even the same genres. Well, they're both RPGs.
There you go. Yeah, well, they're casuals. Anyways, that's why I had a second playthrough. But when did you start finding yourself replaying this game? Because I beat it when I was 10, and then I remember that I really loved the game, but I didn't really knuckle down and play it much up until, I think, college for me. That's when I went, I think I really want to redo this.
I think I played it pretty consistently throughout. So what I found myself doing a lot of the time, I had a lot of time to spare, especially with moving around as a child. And I would find myself playing a lot of these older Super Nintendo games a decent bit. Every couple of years, I'd say consistently for Mario RPG. Up until recently, I'd say at this point, it's been a good 6 or 7 years.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I remember one of our earlier conversations when we were just getting to know each other, when we were much younger. I said, yeah, actually I had to have played it in high school because I remember I got through it in 2 sittings. And I go, I was really shocked that it only took me 10 hours to beat this game, 10 or 12 hours. And this was back when we were just getting to know each other. So I might be exaggerating this, but I feel like you went, you're lying.
I think that was about my reaction just because I remembered it being so much longer. And at that point, it had been a couple of years. And I decided I needed to go ahead and sit down and really try and do it again. I recall following up with you shortly thereafter and being like, yep, you were right. I was able to get all the way to Star Hill in one sitting pretty easily.
Yeah.
It made me so sad.
It makes you sad, but there are very few Super Nintendo, heaven forbid Nintendo games where you go back and you go, this is just as long as I remember it, unless it's like your Dragon Warriors where they say kill 1 million slimes before you can go to the next area. So that's what you would about expect. But subsequent playthroughs, I know. Now, we talk about what we did the first time we played it and subsequent times we played it and how we saw the times come down. But what do you think we can go through, because this isn't a terribly long game when you break it down into pieces, what were the highlights from this game for you? Because almost every encounter to me could be a highlight in a special way. For example, at the beginning of the game, just the subversion of you saved the princess, psych. that was a big thing right then and there. The fact that they didn't really show you the intro screen when you booted it up the first time. That was a big thing.
I really enjoyed that first fight where you're rescuing the princess just because it teaches you to think about how you can go ahead and target different enemies by requiring you to target that chain to beat Bowser the first time.
That actually was... I'm not sure if I'd go as far as calling it a teachable moment because the game outright tells you what to do there.
They do? Oh.
Because if you keep attacking Bowser, Peach goes, Mario, attack the chomp.
Oh, I never actually had that happen. I just figured it out.
I was a dumb child. So she tells you to attack the chomp, and you attack the chomp. So it was an interesting way of showing, though, that you can move between enemies and the significance of doing so. Because as we will talk about later, this actually, the way you beat enemies would affect how the fight would progress, which was really interesting. Anyways, after that first fight when they introduced Smithy, and then they got into the whole, well, this is how our overworld is. You have to rescue Toad the whole way along. And it allowed you to fight different kinds of enemies while rewarding you for fighting different kinds of enemies. And it even gave you a decently significant reward if you saved Toad the whole way through. Am I remembering that right?
I think so. I think it gives you a flower petal that increases your max FP, or perhaps a flower jar.
That does remind me, actually, before we get too much further in the highlights, you were going to ask about how we approached the game individually, about grinding and all that. Did you want to touch on that now, or you want
Well, I was just curious as far as if you ever found yourself grinding. So I talked about Croco and how I had some troubles with Croco, and I still sometimes will find myself just taking 20 minutes to grind to level 6 just so I have the flame orb a little bit earlier. Is that something you did? You know, you talked about being a kid and having issues with different enemies. Did you ever, as a young one, just go back and grind?
Now, that is an interesting point, because also I would like it to be noted, having edited these many, many times, I will really try to find a new word for interesting. I say interesting so often. Anyways, that's another one. What I found myself doing was, somehow I was at the end of this game, and I was level almost 30. And don't you cap at 30? Yep. I was somehow still sucking it down. I don't know. I know I was near the cap, but I wasn't doing great. I don't recall ever grinding, but I don't know what kind of special terrible I was as a child, because I really don't recall having an easy time for a lot of it. I remember having trouble fighting, I'm getting way ahead of myself here, but fighting some of the near in-game bosses, even with my massive level, I had trouble with. I don't think I really understood the idea of equipment, though, because it was my first RPG.
Oh, so if you were under-equipped, then no wonder that you weren't able to go ahead and beat him.
Yeah, I wasn't able to beat Valentina. I wasn't able to beat Dodo. Yeah, I'm not good. Not good.
They even teach you about equipping the gear.
They do. But it didn't, I don't know. I just never really clicked, I guess. I can't remember what was going through my head 20 years ago.
Fair enough.
And so after you go to the Mushroom Kingdom and it has its jazzy little score, and they try to introduce you to, well, go save the princess, and then you meet the first unique character, which huge points to Square, Nintendo, all of them for this one. Right off the bat, the introduction of Mallow, the toad tadpole, really, really interesting, because you, the character, know he's not a tadpole, but you don't know why it's raining when he cries, because he gets mugged. That's the first thing that happens. So that was, I do remember having issues getting his frog coin back. And you mentioned yourself.
Yep, Croco was a tough fight.
Croco was a difficult fight, and Croco also introduced the idea that it's not just necessarily fighting enemies, it's how you approach them sometimes as well. Because if you didn't sneak up on Croco, then he would never get caught. And when you got back to the Mushroom Kingdom after that point, things got dark. The first time you went back to the Mushroom Kingdom as a child, did you kill everything?
Yes.
I think you have to as a child. It just feels right.
The shysters are terrifying everyone. You have a sense that everyone is being victim of a home invasion. Imagine if your entire subdivision just had people who were inside of every house and then waving to each other about, hey guys, we're part of the gang, we're just moving into town. There would be a little bit of outrage for you.
It'd be outrage, and they made everything dark, and they made the creepy music. They really nailed the tone they were going for on that one. And then you beat the first boss, and you get the star.
One quick call out there on the creepy music. I love how that song then becomes used as part of that actual boss fight noise. Yeah. Like it sounds kind of spooky as part of a background theme, but then when you get into the boss fights, then it really charges you up. Boom, ba-dum, boom, boom, ba-dum, boom, boom, ba-dum, boom, boom, ba-dum, boom.
I might have to listen to the soundtrack after. They had really good songs in that. But once you get the star, you realize something's afoot with this whole enterprise that's going down, and you go off to find the rest of the stars. So we'll be able to jump through the beats a bit here till we get to near where the next star were. But Belome, that's what I want to mention. Is that where you were going with this one?
The Caro Sewers.
Yeah. That was one of the more memorable enemies to me in that game. What was he even, a four-eyed horned dog thing that ate you?
Thereabouts.
He was so weird. He's so interesting.
What I love was after you beat him, whenever he has that little note that talks about how even if he loses, he still wins, and then you're standing on the switch and the gate's rising. Hey, what's that sound? Ah! Which introduced you to that fun minigame as you go down the waterfall.
That was never my favorite minigame, but there were quite a few minigames. It frustrated me how pointless the swimming was. Like, it made me mad that I couldn't swim better. But it did have lots of little fun little side bits while going down. If you go into the caves, then you could see the pre-rendered.
I love the one where you have the flower petal basically being argued about by a bunch of monsters all who glare at you as you end up walking away with it just floating down the stream.
Yeah, that was entertaining. But from there, you get to...
you get to Roseway, which that's something that I really enjoyed, where Bowser was a part of a lot of this, as you saw his army at these different points. So they always kind of kept him involved in the plot even before he joined your party. I thought that was really neat.
They did, and it was Caro Sewers before or after you go to the frog place?
That was before.
Okay, so I just want to touch on the fact you find out that Mallow is not actually a tadpole, which... It surprises nobody, but they do the comedic big dun dun dun, and then they play the sad piano.
What I love there is all the tadpoles rushing in from throughout the thing, like, what?
Even the Lakitu comes back. Gasp. But I thought that was really funny, and so Mallow's on his way. And to go to Roseway, I did, even as a child, thought that was really impressive that, oh, look, it's Bowser with all of his people. That's super impressive. And then you get to Rose Town, and it's got the creepy music, and you could get hit by the arrows. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a fantastic touch. And in Rose Town, they introduce, I love Mallow, but Gino is the more memorable of the unique characters. Yes. So the introduction of Gino... And this was one of those times where you can tell that they didn't really know how to work outside the constraints, because they're like, oh, who's this mystery man? When you get to the forest maze, which has one of the best songs in the world, Beware the Forest Mushrooms. A fantastic cover of it is done by Descendants of Erdrich. I bought a CD solely for that song. And Bowyer? Mm-hmm. Bowyer?
I always call him Bowyer.
Okay. You fight Bowyer, who took me longer than I should have to realize he was a living bow. Yeah, I'm not proud of that.
And like we talked before, that forest maze was really neat, but also I just loved that going into those tree stumps. I feel like you had so many of those, and I remember as a kid just enjoying, a lot of times there were nothing but enemies inside of them, but there was that element of mystery to that, of what am I going to find here?
Well, and they even redoubled it, because later in the game, there is a mushroom hunting minigame.
Oh, yeah.
Where you go back and you can get some pretty sweet prizes depending on the mushrooms you pick in that forest. But you beat that boss, you get the second star piece.
Well, really quick there with that boss, I think mechanically that was another great thing, was the locking of the different items. All right, now you can't use special abilities. Now you can't use items. Now you can't guard. That, or was it
You
attack?
could always guard. You could
always guard.
Sometimes it was attack, items, or special. And that was a really useful mechanic because it did mean all the fights just weren't the same. The first boss had minions, the second boss could lock your attacks, the third boss we'll get to. And so you got the second star, you got Gino, who was a really interesting cat, and you went off to Moleville. Did they
I believe you had the pipe vault right after that, though, and that pipe vault was what connected you to Yoshi's Island if you wanted to do that minigame. Pipe vault itself had a lot of fun minigames. I think that's where you had the one where you could hop on the different Goombas.
The whack-a-mole.
Yes, the whack-a-mole, essentially. I don't remember what sort of prize you got from that, though.
I don't either.
I think it was just flower petals, jars, or things of that nature. That was usually what for those kind of things. What they default to is if you got first place, then you now had a flower jar, or the one that gave you flower box. I think was what gave you 5 flower points.
And that was unique. And you actually showed that there is a unique enemy within that called the Recon guy. I think you said, yeah, something like that. And I'm not sure. I think we'd encountered him, but he ran instantly if you didn't kill him. So there's still things we're finding out about this. But after that, did you go to Moleville from there? Yeah, you went to Moleville. Mm-hmm. Because long story short on that one, you had to go save some kids from the mine. In the process, you got jacked by Croco again, which showed a very interesting sense of continuity to me. Because this wasn't something I was used to in these games, the enemies coming back.
Yep.
And that's my inexperience with RPGs at the time. But that was a hard fight as a kid, because he stole all your items in the fight.
And Mallow was a pinch hit healer. He was never an amazing healer, at least to me. So not having the mid mushrooms to heal yourself with, that made that challenging.
Not having the mid mushrooms and not having the pick me ups, because when you went down, you were down.
Right.
And he could hit hard. But you fought at the end. The boss was Punchinello. Who I never had trouble with him. I thought he was fun, but I never had trouble with him.
Well, you talk about the minions and how each of these bosses was different. That's what I liked about him, was that escalation where the bombs got bigger and bigger and bigger as far as his little helpers. So the minions in the first one are essentially just, hey, you have to plan on, do you want to focus just on Mac, or you want to take out all the shysters? I focused on the shysters as well. Bowyer, of course, you had that locking gimmick, and now for the third one, you have that where you have to take out these bombs, otherwise they're going to deal damage to you. I enjoyed that,
and not insignificant damage. And after that, you played the minecart game to get out, and that was fun. I thought it was too long though. You had to go through like 3 stages. And from there, you did Booster's Tower, which classic. That is when you got Bowser, who I don't know about you, but as soon as I had Bowser, Gino was out for the rest of the game.
The main issue, I loved Gino thematically, and I loved his abilities, but I found that he took a lot of damage, and Mallow was already kind of weak at that point and taking a lot of damage. I liked the idea of having someone that could soak up some hits. I think I did Mario, Gino, and Bowser, actually. I take that back. I kicked out Mallow first. I didn't kick out Gino.
I kicked out Gino because he couldn't heal with his, which was a bummer, but... So Booster's Tower was a ton of fun, and at the end of the tower, they introduced the Knife Guy and Great Guy, which are only significant because of things that'll come back later. But there was a ton of fun mini games, and the first time I played the game, I fought Booster. I have fought Booster in there before. Every time since then, I've never fought Booster because it's too much fun the other way. Then from there, he takes Princess Peach to Marrymore.
Yep, you have the fun little running mini game where you're chasing after the Sniffets.
Those mini games just felt so long. Like, even that one felt like it was super long, personally. But at Marrymore, that was one of the fights I had difficulty with, was the cake. Because it wasn't really a normal fight. His HP would regenerate, so to speak. So that one I had trouble with when I was underleveled.
What I found with him was that he tended to use a lot of magic attacks that would target everyone. And especially, I think that's where I started struggling to have Gino in my party, was because the wear and tear of getting hit by that made healing and being able to do damage difficult. It's one of those worst things in a turn-based game where you find yourself spending your entire turn healing to brace up to get hit again by the boss. Destructive cycle.
But after that was all said and done, not including the fact that that introduced Peach to your party once you did that, which after that, it was always Mario, Bowser, Peach.
Same here.
Just because it was the best combination to me. One of the things I thought was fun, did you ever overrun your bill at the Marymore Hotel?
I did not. What happens?
You can keep if you keep turning off your light, you keep running up the tab. If it goes over the money you have, for every X amount you stayed that you couldn't pay for, you had to work as a hotel. You had to be a concierge. So you actually had to go and help the guests who were staying.
That's an amazing touch. I'll check that out.
You really should check it out. But from there, you went to Star Hill, which was baffling to me as a child.
I thought it was interesting. Looking back at it now, I think it makes sense. It kind of slows things down. Things are kind of a rush with a lot of frantic activity for that entire little third subsection with that third star piece, Booster's Tower, and Marymore. This kind of lets things kind of take a little bit more of a relaxed vibe. It was interesting seeing all of the different wishes that people had made, but I think the biggest thing that surprised me there was the lack of a boss in Star Hill for that fourth star piece. I remember just flinching as a child, like, where is it? Where's it? When's it going to happen? I'm going to get my butt kicked. I know it. Never happens.
And that was the place when we found out that Mallow's parents were actively looking for him, that Luigi's inferiority complex was carrying over to this game, and it was just an unexpected breather level.
I think this is where Luigi's inferiority complex actually gets defined as an actual narrative item. I can't think of any other game where that's touched on before this.
Valid point. So once you were done with Star Hill, that's when you went to Seaside Town, which something was amiss. They talked about having a star. That's when you went down into Davy Jones' locker to get his star, and that introduced you to a bunch of different ideas. You had your puzzles to progress. You had the one-on-one boss fight with Davy Jones. It was a lot of ideas that were put together in a really unique fashion, and especially since the bad guy didn't really seem to be bad. And I like that a lot. So much so that when you take the star he gives you back to town, and it turns out all the villagers are evil gas, which is no shot given how they're acting. When Davy Jones pops up, so he forces them to fight you. I like that. I've never seen likable enemies in games before.
Davy Jones is still one of my... He's up there with Gino for me as far as characters I would welcome back into a video game in a heartbeat.
That would be amazing.
One cool gameplay thing I really enjoyed about going down to Davy Jones' locker is you have those stars, which are kind of like a free level up a lot of the time to clear out enemies on the map. I do remember in that area, that's a spot where you can chain together enough enemies to occasionally get 2 levels up, depending on how close you were. I remember that excitement, like, I get two level up bonuses. This is amazing.
Well, and a trick you can use there, and I think now that I'm saying this, is you can do the whole star thing, and then if you die, it'll take you back to the last point you were at, but it'll keep your levels, but it will give you back your money, and the star will still be there, so you can just keep doing that to get free XP.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's kind of a game breaker, but it gets to the point real fast where it's not worth the trouble.
Sure.
And from there was a stretch where you start leaving. Oh, you go to Monster Town. Monster Town, which that's where you fight the definitively Square Enix fight, because Kulex can be there, and it's straight out of FF4.
Yep, they got the boss music and everything.
Everything.
I love that as a challenge boss when I was younger. That's another one that really whipped my butt until, even going back, I use my red essences for that fight until I can take out some of the crystals that do a lot of damage, even to Princess Peach with the lazy shell. Prior to that, though, then I think you have a Giant's Way is the name of that dungeon that you have to go through to actually get to Monster Town.
Oh, yeah, you got to go through the temple.
Yep. I remember that being just such a very long dungeon as a child. I'm curious if it feels that way going back and playing it now.
I would be curious. The other thing is that they reintroduced Belome as a way worse enemy because he could make clones of you after eating you. And that's one of the reasons I'm glad that I had Peach, because I would always hope that he would clone Peach because she went down after 80 HP. One hit. And in Monster Town, now all these enemies are friendly to you. Now there's the 3 ghosts that you can go and get the medallion for. There's the Jinx dojo where you can fight the increasingly difficult fights to get. There was so many unique things.
It kind of seemed like a little fun rest area before you pounded through the rest of the game, to just kind of say, hey, here's all these little side quest ideas that we had. We're going to go ahead and implement them here and let you kind of explore these at your own pace. The casino, I think, is also what comes in there, which touches on Knife Guy and Great Guy.
The casino, that you have to go to Valley's End to get to the casino.
Oh, okay.
Because that's the thing. After you do Monster Town, they help you get up Land's End. Then you go to Land's End, and there is a casino. That's one of the most hidden secrets. That's Great Guy's Casino. Because to get into Great Guy's Casino, you have to go back to Booster Tower and get the card from Knife Guy, who is now playing a juggling game. You have to beat that 13 times, I believe. That casino sucked.
I remember being let down too. Like, I was trying to think, it's like, is there really a reason that it was worth going to the casino? I guess you could do blackjack.
If you beat Great Guy's guessing game 200 times, he gives you basically an infinite rock candy. That's, no, not worth it. And so from there, we are running a little short on time, so I'm trying to pick up the pace.
Sure.
From there, you go to Nimbus Land, you find Mallow's actual family. Long story short, you save his family, get rid of the usurper. Once you do that, you can go down into the volcano, which has some really hard enemies, all things considered. I'd also like to say that Mallow's saving his parents, some of the music in there was some of the best weird, creepy music. They even brought Birdo back in there.
That was a great fight.
That was a really nice touch. And it wasn't until the second time through I played that I figured out that if you were guarding, you could actually knock the eggs back and then destroy them and cause a ton of damage to her.
One thing about Valentina I didn't pick up whenever I was younger was how curvaceous they were making her.
Oh, I did.
A formidable memory for young Josh.
Yeah, I remember when you hit her, she jiggled.
Yes.
Definitely remembered that. But going back to the volcano, there were difficult enemies in there. That was one of those levels that just felt like that Nintendo went, bah, no. And it delivered. And at the end of the level, we talked about this earlier, you fought the Axum Rangers. They did a really good job of switching up the whole star formula, especially near the end. And you got that back, and it let you get to Bowser's Keep, and you went through an amazing trial set of challenges. 2 puzzle challenges, 2 fight challenges, 2 platform challenges. And I went back and I got all of them because they were super awesome. And this was before many hidden weapons, so you could get everybody's best weapon except for Mario's. Mario's and Peach's there, but they did give you a Peach weapon there.
And I love that and once you get through all of that, then you get to the end, you're fighting Smithy, and then Exor, I think was the name of the handle. And that big surprise there, when you do beat that boss and you turns out it's not actually Smithy, and you're now sucked inside of the sword.
You get sucked inside the sword, and there's an incredibly dark aesthetic that prevails once you get sucked inside that sword, to the point where you get to the end of this level, and we talked earlier about how you defeat enemies determines how the fight's going to go. You fought a jester and a guy with a sword, and depending on who you killed first, they jumped into a giant snake, and then whoever it was determined the kind of attacks said giant snake could have. I always thought that was super interesting.
Yeah.
But at the end, you get to Smithy's production plant, and through the whole thing, you're fighting carbon copies of the first, second, and later on in the game bosses, which blew my mind as a child. Oh my God, they're bringing back all these bosses. I don't want to do this again. But it really sold the significance of why you needed to stop everything. So you get to Smithy at the very, very end, after everybody's saying, you gotta stop him, you gotta stop him, you gotta stop him. And you fight Smithy, and he's making weapons the whole time, and he dumps you into the basement, and he's suddenly a big crazy monster. And stakes are huge, and you defeat him, and you get the 7th star back, and hooray, everything's saved. Well, what does that mean for you, Gino? Bye, guys.
Oh.
No. But then he's a little happy star, and you get a parade, and
And with that parade and the amount of fireworks that you bought, that's something I loved about the game, was you had all these fun ways to waste your money, from that dream pillow in Nimbus Land where you could possibly get special items or just see odd sequences.
Or creepy dreams.
Very creepy dreams at times. You had the Beetle minigame that cost a lot of coins. Buying the fireworks takes a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
You find yourself not needing money, but it's nice that they realized that and gave you outlets to spend the money anyways.
It was. And from this game, so we obviously have enormously fond memories of this game, so much so that we've played it enough and we talked about it for almost a solid hour. But from there, it inspired both the Mario and Luigi games. It started out on the Game Boy Advance.
Yep, with Superstar Saga.
And the Paper Mario games, which started on the N64 and have recently taken a decidedly un-RPG turn. But in the future, we will be talking about both of those franchises in different episodes. So I'm really glad. Did you have anything else to add to the legacy?
Nope.
I apologize we had to burn through this so fast at the end, but I realized there was so much you could talk about in this game that we kind of front-loaded it quite a bit. Anyways, I am very glad I could have you on to talk about this today, Nick.
Thanks, Josh. It's been fun.
So I think that is all we have for today. As usual, don't forget to jump on our socials and tell us what you thought about this game. And until next time, this is Co-Opinions.